I've spent the past year swapping a Hellcat Red-Eye into my 1995 Jeep Wrangler, which came stock with a 4-cylinder engine and 117 horsepower. But now with this 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8, it will make 797 horsepower. Wow. I did the math, and that's a 7 times increase in power, if you round up. But today, we'll be putting this little Wrangler to the test. Last episode, I broke my engine and did a sloppy rebuild. This episode, we'll see if the engine can survive a dyno session and how much horsepower it'll make before something gives out. But first, I need to address some issues. Okay, we're back with the Hellcat Wrangler. I've been putting some miles on it and there has been a squeak anytime I release my clutch. I'm told that is the pilot bearing, so it's another transmission out job. I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna complain about it. Okay, the transmission is out, or as out as it needs to be in order to get that pilot bearing. Looking at the input shaft, I can't tell if there's any damage. So, I'm just really hoping that this is actually the issue. Well, here's our culprit. I seem to have installed the clutch reversed. This side was facing the engine, and I guess it should face the other way. Oops. So I see the scrapes on the flywheel. I don't think it's that bad. I think we just put it back together correctly and send it. Alright, this is what the interior of a bell housing looks like on a manual transmission. Here's the input shaft. There's no play there, which is great. Here's the collar. This is what the throwout bearing rides on. And there's the pivot for your clutch fork. And then here's where the slave cylinder comes in and pushes on the other side of the clutch fork. So here's the clutch fork and throwout bearing. Just goes right there, slides onto that pivot. I'll put a clip here. And then, yeah. And then we've got the pilot bearing right here on the very end of the crankshaft. I'm here under the engine. And that's where this very tip of the input shaft of the transmission rides to just keep everything stable, because there's a lot of forces, torsional, and then the clutch fork pressing up against the pressure plate. So it just keeps everything stable. Okay, I'm just gonna put it back together. I'm not gonna replace anything, and it should work. Let's do it. Okay, we've got the transmission bolted back in. It's kind of difficult to align, but to be honest, that was the quickest installation I've ever done. Okay, so now I can push in the clutch, put it in gear, and let out. And it's quiet like it should be. Woohoo! Alright, I've been driving this Jeep a lot for the past 400 miles. Hasn't had any issues, except I'm not getting fuel pressure. So I pulled the fuel pump relay and instead just jumped this output pin over to my battery positive, and it's not happening. I'm like, okay, this could be my fuel pump, right? So I used a different battery, and I jumped using a connector that's way up. That's the one. It's right next to my rear wheel here, and I did get pressure. So somewhere along the way, we're not getting voltage to that fuel pump. So you see these two connectors, this black one here, and then this gray one behind it. Well, I had a very similar issue about a year ago at this point. So the wire for my fuel pump used to go in that old gray connector. That is the stock connector. And what had happened was the terminals would pull so many amps that it would make it hot on the inside and actually melted the plastic internally of that connector. So I just had this intermittent fuel pump issue. Well, I've since made a dedicated connector and it's been running great ever since, but for some reason, something's not working now. So it seems like I'm gonna have to tear up the wiring and I'm gonna have to do it quick. It's about 7 p.m. now, and I've got until 7 a.m. to get this running and to the tuner. All right, I've undone my wiring and it's kind of a huge mess right now, but I've rigged up a test battery, and if I touch this pin to what I believe is a fuel pump out, you can hear that we have fuel pressure. So this is consistent with what I found. I checked my grounds, they all looked good. So it's definitely something in between the relay and this connector right here. And there's not much, so we're gonna find something. Okay, I found an issue. I don't know if it's the issue, but it looks like this wire was actually sliced. And now if I give it power, we do get fuel pressure. Okay, here's the finished product. I went ahead and reloomed this wire. Went a little bit excessive on the electrical tape, but I don't think we're gonna have that same problem again. So let's tidy this up and test it out. It works. The next thing I had to do to prepare for the dyno session is provide my fuel pump regulator with boost reference. So I robbed the fitting off of an old regulator to install onto a special adapter that I found online. And then I installed all of that onto the lid of my Hellcat supercharger. Without this boost reference, the injectors will be fighting the pressure in the supercharger to deliver fuel to the engine. Increasing fuel pressure with boost means that the injectors will have an easier time providing enough fuel. So basically, as my supercharger makes boost, this reference line will tell my regulator to increase the fuel pressure. This is easy enough to set up using a return style fuel system because the fuel pump is constantly at maximum effort and pressure is regulated by varying how much fuel is rejected back to the fuel tank. In contrast, most OEMs today will vary voltage or duty cycle at the fuel pump to regulate fuel pressure. Alright, the last thing I have to do is calibrate the fuel pressure sensor. It's just a little bit off, and in order to get this tuned properly, I want the tuner to have a good reading. Okay, so the fuel pressure is calibrated, but I made a grave mistake. I accidentally modified my map sensor, and I accidentally auto-scaled it within Holly. It's been a nightmare. I kind of had to retune my car just to get it dailying again. Anyways, I think I got it back to where it was, and I think I should be able to make the 40-minute drive to the tuner this morning with what little sleep I have left to get. All right, it's about 7:15 in the morning. We're about to go drive this thing to the tuner, and nothing's gonna go wrong. And nothing went wrong. I made it to the tuner and dropped off my Jeep before heading to a Starbucks to begin my workday. The tuner gave me a call when he began performing dyno pulls, but by the time I got there, I was told something had already gone wrong. The walk to find out what broke felt like a mile. I was just hoping it wasn't the engine I had just put back together. But in racing, sometimes you gotta prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Is it yours?
Oh,
It's broken now.
oh, that's not so bad.
Was it the drive shaft?
Okay, just the drive shaft.
And it turns out it was just the drive shaft. You can see it's just totally smoked. Look at that, all bent up. What's funny is the cap for the U-joint is still in on that side. And then here's how it looks on my differential. See, we still have this one cap, but this one totally crunched. Pretty good carnage, but thankfully it really didn't touch the underside of my Jeep like at all. I mean, maybe a gash here, kind of bent this, but I mean, it's easy enough to do just with your hands, so all in all, not too bad. So there you have it, 599 horsepower. So did it break? Yes, it broke. My U-joint broke after it made 600 horsepower on the dyno. I really can't be mad at that. When you have a track record like mine of building engines for them to fail within a few minutes, to have this engine put 600 horsepower on a dyno, not have an issue, and then be able to drive home in 95-degree weather for an hour under its own power, I'm very happy. You know, you never want to have a dyno session end with something breaking, but a U-joint, it's nothing. I've broken U-joints before, and I got what I wanted. Really what I wanted was a conservative tune that I can street the car with, you know, and now I can focus on other things like putting a hood on it, cold air intake, closing off the transmission tunnel, air conditioning, stuff like that, that's gonna make this way better to daily drive. And as far as I can tell, the engine is healthy. I guess time will tell whether or not the rebuild was successful, but 600 horsepower? And that wasn't even all it had. This was still, he was trying to get a baseline for the tune, and it has more left in it, I'm told. I really couldn't be any happier. I'm happy and I'm tired, and I think this is a perfect ending to this video. Stay tuned for the next one. We'll be doing some quality of life stuff. Make this actually fun to drive. Thanks for watching.